President Crowley?
Present.
Commissioner Farrell?
Here.
No. President Mateo?
Here. At this time of the evening, we see if there's any public comment for items not on the agenda.
Yeah, there's some over there.
Okay. James Lee Hahn.
Is it okay if I? Yeah, the right
Yeah.
corner there. Sorry, I haven't. We're out. Good evening to the commission. I just wanted to mention a few things. I have dates and times, so I have my notebook with me. The first thing I want to mention is just that it was reported that those who had asked Commissioner Ciancarelli to resign were supporters of one specific other commissioner. I just want to clarify, I think the board already knows, I hope the board already knows, but I just want to clarify for the public that those who have been concerned about dual office holding and have respectfully asked the commissioner to resign are not supporters of one specific commissioner. We're from all over the county, from the Bay side, from over here on the Fifth side, and that this is just an issue we're concerned about. And as I've expressed to this board before, I've actually voted for a majority of the current sitting board at one time or another. Just want to put that out there. Second thing I want to mention is that tomorrow at the Town Center in Redwood City at the 455 building in room number 101 from 6 to 8 p.m. The community task force for sea level rise will be meeting and all the working groups will be there. It would be great if any of the harbor commissioners have time to attend. And the last thing I just wanted to mention is I wanted to actually thank Commissioner Brennan for I've seen a lot of coverage about Mavericks and about the fact that women are going to be able to surf there competitively in the future. So I just want to commend her for that. Part of the public trust doctrine is about equal access to the coast, or public access. And to me, public access means equal access. So if you're going to hold this event, making sure that there's equal opportunities for all communities to compete is really important. So thank you for that. And that's it. Thanks.
I have a public comment request from Commissioner Brennan.
To sit today. Thank you. I just wanted to bring everyone's attention to a letter to the editor in the Half Moon Bay Review, and it's in the edition that just came out today, and it's titled "Help Fishermen Get Through Tough Times," written by Lori French, who is the Vice President for the Central Coast Women for Fisheries from Morro Bay. And she's written a letter about the hard times that fishermen are experiencing up and down the coast of California. She starts the letter by clearing up some misconceptions about the Dungeness crab fishery and the closure. And she talks about what's happening right now with the loans that are being offered to fishermen and what's available and what's not available. She also talks about food banks and some of the help that is being provided to fishermen. And she winds it up by letting everyone know that donations can be sent to the Central Coast Women for Fisheries, and she gives an address and contact information. So I think it's a really good letter. I think it explains, if you take the time to read it, I'm not going to read the whole thing, it's rather long, but if you take the time to read it, I think it really will help the board become more compassionate about the hardships that our fishing fleet is experiencing right now. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to point that out. Thank you.
All right, item C on our agenda is staff recognition. And I believe we have some staff recognition.
We do. I don't know whether the staff are going to be here. Two things actually I'd like to mention, President Mateo, thank you. I think I want to recognize all staff. We did get notice recently that a critical number to the financial planning in the Harbor District called the workers' comp modifier. We got a notice on a reduction in that. What that basically means is if all other things equal, the premium for workers' compensation insurance is $100 and you have a poor safety record and a record of claims, it will be modified upwards. It might be modified to 150%, in which case you would be paying $150. We just got notification because of a good safety record that our workers' comp modifier was went from 83% to 80%. So all other things equal, a workers' comp premium might be $100, we're now paying $80. That's testament to the safe practices and training of our staff. And so all staff deserve credit for that. The other staff recognition I'd like to do is for the Assistant Harbor Masters and also for Deputy Harbor Master Carrie Smith. We had the Mavericks contest recently, as we all know, and it was obviously my first time working with this staff on that competition. I know that the planning started in October of last year, and then the day before with a coordinating meeting at the Emergency Operations Center here in Hampton Bay, representing 14 different agencies, public agencies or departments. Then from local, state, and federal agencies. And then the next morning we started at 05:30 with the Marine Safety briefing led by Deputy Harbor Master Carrie Smith, where I can absolutely tell you that everybody there was listening to and paying attention to Carrie. That's CAL FIRE, that's sheriffs, that's NOAA, that's Coast Guard. Carrie was very much the man in charge, and they listened to him. Then that was followed by another briefing at 6:30. We were on the water by 8. We had all of our assets deployed, and our Assistant Harbor Master John Draper was incident command for all the water safety operations, ably assisted by Assistant Harbor Master Jim Merlo from Oyster Point. And Carrie Smith was out on the water as our other staff were out on the water, including our staff that are trained in rescue watercraft operations. They're out on the water in wetsuits and rescue watercraft. I think from our perspective, the event went off very well. The thing that knocked me out from beginning to end was the level of interagency cooperation shown amongst all of these different federal agencies and the respect with which our Harbor Patrol Department were treated by all of those other agencies. And so that's my staff recognition to our staff who participated in that.
All right. Thank you.
I could comment.
Go ahead.
I think your staff are currently involved in an incident as we speak. There's a lot going on down at the harbor site. Here's your rescue officer for his beach.
Thank you for clarifying. I was wondering whether they were
Thanks. More units than I've ever seen respond to any incident.
That's true, yeah. We counted 15 vehicles.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you.
I would like to echo Steve's sentiments. I had the opportunity to spend the day with our staff at Mavericks, and it was fantastic. I got to see firsthand our staff in action, and I was incredibly impressed. And as Steve said, just the coordination, the organization of just all the first responders was incredible. I was able to go to incident command, and I asked Steve, who's in charge, which is normally the question that, people don't want to have to answer when you're in the middle of a situation. But he had mentioned that Carrie was, Carrie and John Draper, but mostly John, was pretty much, taking care of everything, organized everything with Coastside Fire, the Coast Guard, the Sheriff's Office. So kudos to John Draper, if you could let him know. But I also got to go on the boat and just see how things operated. I was on the Challenger with Steve, and I was so impressed, and I want to thank, Jim Merlot for indulging me and allowing me to spend the day with him and those staff members at Pillar Point, Greg, Mike, Tyler, who operated the boat. They were all great. But I also was very impressed when I saw the field operations guide FOG that Carrie put together, and it was very impressive. And if you could also thank Carrie for doing such a great job in prepping and organizing, that was incredibly eye-opening and impressive. I too thought that the coordination with all of the organizations that had to be ready to respond was amazing, because it just, everything was seamless. And I got to visit with the Sheriff's Office and Coastside Fire and the Coast Guard, and they really have a lot of respect for our staff and what we were doing that day. So kudos to your staff, Steve, and just thank them from the bottom of my heart for allowing me to spend the day with them. Thank you.
All right, on to the consent calendar. So we have 5 items on the consent calendar at the present time.
I'd like to pull them all off.
All right, we had a request to pull all of the items off of the consent calendar. So let's move on to item 1, bills and claims. Commissioner Brennan.
So I just wanted to mention that I had an opportunity to review the bills at the administrative office last week, and I had a few questions about some of them, which I didn't have a chance to ask the general manager, so I thought I'd mention it now. Just wanted to first point out that I know we've discussed before, it would be good to get more information about what our utilities are costing on an annual basis, sort of a month by month, because it seems like there's a lot of odd fluctuation, especially with the water bills. And also wanted to point out that our PG&E is almost $20,000. It would be good to get some oversight to see if we're if there's anything we could do to bring our bill down. And wanted to point out that we have a lot of legal expenses, which is not unusual for this district. We've got Cox, Wooten, Lerner, Griffin, Hansen at $1,682.50. We've got Hansen Bridget at $23,532.73. Liebert Cassidy Whitmore at $3,292.60. And that's it for legal fees. I'm hoping that our staff, our management is going to be able to help us bring down those fees in the future, because clearly our district can't afford it. Also wanted to point out that there is a bill here for some engineering work that's continuing regarding Romeo Pier removal, and wanted to see if we could get some clarification on the Stolowski and Gonzalez repair and maintenance for $42,474.50. Wondering if staff could clarify. I think I remember what that's for, but just wanted to check.
West Trail.
That's what I thought. Okay, so that was for part of the West Trail repairs.
Correct.
But not the full cost.
Correct.
Okay. And I did want to compliment the staff on how well organized the bills have been. So thank you for that. And that's all I had.
Mr. President, I'd like to, after reviewing the bills and claims for the period ending February 26, 2016, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the bills and claims in the amount of $217,523.08.
And I'll second.
All right, roll call, please.
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Crawley?
Aye.
Commissioner Garavano?
Aye.
President Mateo?
Aye. Okay, item 2, Half Moon Bay Kayak company permit 2016-12 and approving the amended permit. You wanted all these pulled? Would you like to address this first or someone else?
Well, I was hoping that there could be a staff report, because I think there are probably some public members here that would like to hear it.
Thank you, Commissioner Brennan. And yes, and I talked with Abu Bay Kayak Company, and the company did send an email to all the commissioners yesterday regarding an issue that related to a component of their request from last year that addressed the lease part. And I would like to suggest that this be discussed if you so choose, but that we authorize the Abu Bay Kayak Company to continue as they have been doing since that initial approval in April of last year, while we get together and figure out some of the other issues related to the part that we have not specifically approved to grant and maintain it. So I think that's where we're at, right?
Before we discuss it later.
So I have a question. So are you pulling this item, or you still want us to vote on this item?
So I'll move to table this until you've had the discussions with the appropriate party.
And authorize the extension of the existing
Yes.
license through June 30th. Would
Yes,
that
that would be my
possibly
motion.
part of your
Yes,
motion?
yes.
Second.
Great,
Thank you.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Farley?
Aye.
Commissioner Parabon?
Aye.
President Mateusz?
Aye. Item 3, special event permit for Dolphin South End Rowers event at Oyster Point Marina Park. Can we get our staff report on this issue?
This is a special event. Melanie knows more about it. It's a special event. They have a fee waiver request of $65. This is a non-profit organization, operates a run that goes through the starts and finishes at Oyster Point. And given that they are a non-profit and that they would be using the facilities pretty much for the reason that they exist, staff is recommending waiver of the $65 fee for the event.
And I just wanted to comment quickly that I really appreciate that the map was included, so we can see where this race is happening. And
I apologize, they just gave me the map yesterday morning.
thank you for providing it. And I don't actually have any other questions, so I don't know if any other commissioners do, but I'd be happy to make the motion to waive event fees and approve athletic event permit for nonprofit organization Dolphin South End Runners for the 2 running events on Sunday, May 29th, 2016 and Sunday, September 4th, 2016 at Oyster Point Marina.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Farley?
Aye.
Commissioner Parabon?
Aye.
President Mateusz?
Aye. Okay, item 4, a special use permit for the Coastside Fishing Foundation for the 2016 Oyster Point Marina Park Halibut and Striper Derby. Staff report, please.
Again, Melanie can jump in, but again, a nonprofit organization is seeking to receive a waiver of fees for an activity occurring at Oyster Point that is central to the mission of the district and the operation of Oyster Point Marine. This is, the last one was, the staff is recommending waiver of the fees.
Okay, board discussion.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve waiver of the fees for the special use permit for the Coastside Fishing Foundation for the 2016 Oyster Point Marina Halibut Striper Derby.
Second.
And I had a question. I hadn't heard of the Coastside Fishing Foundation. I wondered if you could tell us what it is, or maybe Tom knows.
Coastside Fishing Club is a C7. They're able to engage as a nonprofit and raise funds to work in fisheries legislation. Coastside Fishing Foundation is the nonprofit C3, so that they're able to actually take donations, issue donation receipts, and it's a separate organization, separate board, and so on.
But kind of connected to the fishing club.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for explaining that.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Flowers?
Aye.
Commissioner Terrabonne?
Aye.
President Mateo?
Aye. All right, item 5 on our agenda, commercial activity permit for baby boot camp at Oyster Point Marina
Take it away, Madam.
Park.
Well, if you have any questions, it's pretty self-explanatory. She wants to have an exercise class 3 to 5 times a week with 5 to 10 ladies with their babies and strollers, and yeah, that's about it. So it's baby boot camp. Sounds great.
Not key and integral to the purpose and function of the marina, and it's a for-profit organization, and it's an ongoing, so it's a commercial activity permit as opposed to a special event permit.
Right. So,
Okay. So I move that we approve the commercial activity permit 2016-30 for baby boot camp classes at Oyster Point Marina Park.
Second.
Any other commissioner discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Flowers?
aye.
Commissioner Terrabonne?
Aye.
President Mateo?
Aye. All right, that takes care of our consent calendar. Now moving on to item 6, preliminary review of capital improvement plan, receipt of public input and commission direction to staff for the 2016-2017 fiscal year budget. May we have a staff report on that?
I will be taking care of that staff report presentation. I'm going to ask Melanie if she would to get this set up. We're going to use that. I'll be speaking to them up there. And if you would offer me the opportunity for this communication with something I heard earlier, I would like to give you a voicemail message. Thank you.
Now it's not working.
Oh, I missed something. I missed part of our packet here.
You're missing
I
part?
was wondering why it didn't have a number on it. So all of a sudden, we're gonna have to step backwards here. How do you,
Yeah, it's kind of probably
It's far
behind this.
deep in your packet. Keep going.
Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, I think it's after that.
That's an addendum to-
It's where this thing is, this fold. See this
Okay,
further
perfect.
document?
oh, no, not that, I'm talking about this page.
Thank you. Well, I can't see it.
I just put that in for reference for a couple of consent
For
items,
the items, yeah.
for the permits and stuff, that's all.
All right, well, I thought I'd be able to look at the screen. Okay, so.
All right, so this doesn't,
That has
all
nothing to
right,
do with
perfect,
the
got
That
it.
was just for the consent items.
All righty, perfect. Now we're, should we use the one that was provided to us in our board packet or this new one? Are they the same?
The new one. It's actually, not, there's not really any difference, it just looks a little clean.
It's
Okay.
reorganized.
There's no different data.
Yeah.
It's just the page break is where it's supposed to be,
Yeah.
for example.
Would you like to update us on the harbor situation?
I got a garbled message saying Steve can't be there, we're on the water.
Gotcha, gotcha.
Okay. So, as we work towards developing a budget, it's clear that what we need to do is really get a good handle on what our major maintenance and capital projects are for the coming year, not just for 16, 17, but ideally we want to know what they're going to look like over the next 5 years. So what this is a first crack at a 5-year CIP for the district. This is the result of a lot of conversations with district staff and a lot of personal observations on my part. I want to thank John Draper, Jim Merlo in particular, who participated greatly in the development of this and who obviously unfortunately can't be here this evening. Again, we are at the very beginning of March. The part of this that will become a part of the budget is just the 2016-17 column. You know, I don't need to stand in front of it because I'm obstructing people's view. I'll just get over there and move. Yeah, okay. The part of it that will move into the budget will be column B, the 2016-17, and that will be capital improvements and major maintenance budget for that fiscal year once this commission has reviewed, added, amended, changed, so on and so forth.
Steve, could you make it full screen, just because it might make it a little bit easier to read
Bet.
or bigger?
Well, what I can do too, well, before I do that, let me do this.
What we have in the packet.
Okay, now,
The one that, the new one is just a cleaner copy.
Okay.
okay.
Great. Thanks.
So, so we did develop this over the course of some time, as I said. And this includes some of the interim capital plans reviewed by the Harbor Commission in August and October of last year. We've revisited it. They're consolidated so that in some instances there were items that were electrical issues on the Johnson Pier. That showed up in 3 or 4 places. We've consolidated that into one electrical item, Johnson Pier, for clarity and simplicity. Additionally, the plan addresses certain capital asset purchases, such as vehicles or system software, and I'm going to make a caveat to that in just a second. But, for example, one of the things that we haven't developed yet is a complete listing of all of our vehicle status and equipment and a depreciation schedule for them and when we can look out to 2020 and beyond for replacement of vehicles. But what we do know right now is that, for example, Pillow Point, we need a new truck. And we need that this year, and we estimate we'll need a new golf cart by the 18-19 fiscal year.
Where's the truck at? Which line?
This is, I can't tell you the line number now because I went full screen.
Oh, oh, I see it. Replace truck and cart. Okay.
Yeah. And you'll see in red, I put various comments there. There are also comments over onto the right-hand side of the screen. What I did say is, I also mentioned system software because we've been working with Fund Balance, that's our fundamental accounting software. We estimated that software package was going to be no longer supported by the company, and that replacement of that was a very significant expense. We had that budgeted in, that's further down the sheet, in admin, we had it budgeted in 17-18 for $250,000. Glenn has been doing great work in drilling into some of these initial assumptions and has now found that the software, with some amendments, maybe the addition of some modules, will continue to be supported. So when we get down to administration, you'll see that I struck that out, deducted it off the totals. We don't need to spend $250,000 in the 17-18 year on system software.
So is that on the?
This was printed before.
No, it's there.
Is it struck out?
No.
No.
The number, what you just stated about the change in the numbers is reflected in the document.
Right.
Where is it? Just so I can
Under
find it.
administration, second page.
See, way down at the bottom, we've got administration.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And so what I've done here, as you can see, I've highlighted it here, struck it out, and deducted it from the totals that were estimated for the 2017-18 fiscal year.
Could you you could elaborate a little bit on that, because I thought that was such a big thing that we had to get this new software. I've been hearing about that for a while.
Glenn?
I can elaborate, but it's a quick elaboration. Finally talked directly to Tyler's software, including today a conversation with their person that does the updates and maintains their software. Said it just simply wasn't true. The information that we had that this software was not going to be supported in a couple of years was not true. And that, as I know, Tyler's practice is to give you at least 2 and usually 3 or 4 is better years notice when they're no longer going to support the software. The reason I took it at face value when I was told that was I had thought that people that told me that had on staff at the time had heard that directly from the company. But I checked with the company and I'm satisfied not only that, but that there are modules and it has features that we're looking forward to training our staff to use, maybe in a much more robust system than the harbor has thought it had all these years. More on that in the coming months.
So we were underutilizing the software essentially?
I believe that let's put it this way, our account representative and the people I talked to there made that case today, but let's find out when we try to use it.
Thank you.
But at this point, I think, speaking with Glenn, we're comfortable deleting it out for the 2017-18 year. Again, the 5-year part is the planning tool. It's only the 16-17 column that will become a part of the budget. And that budget is going to, so this list is going to continue to be refined during the coming months. For example, we will be having this discussion again. We want to have this discussion again at our next meeting, which will be held in South City, so that any residents from that side of the hill can come over and can come to the meeting and provide input at that point. And speaking of that, we did send out a very significant email blast to make sure that as wide an audience was reached about this meeting this evening and this topic of discussion. And you'll notice that the agenda is otherwise fairly light to give the maximum possible time for this commission and the public to discuss the 5-year CIP. So I think the largest assumption, and if I shrink this down for a minute, the detail won't be important. I can expand it again. It's not going to let me go down. It's not going to let me shrink below 100. Oh, there we go. You can see this is the pillar point section, and then we've got an oyster point section here. And the biggest assumption made in the development of this 5-year CIP, and it was a necessary assumption, is that we'll continue to operate Oyster Point Marina under the terms of the JPA through the termination of the JPA in 26. This is the only way to plan, and we don't want to short the public, short ourselves, bet against ourselves. And so it's also our responsibility to maintain some of our facilities over there, so that you'll see that we've got some things like, again, a replacement truck here. We've got golf carts, but we've also got transformers on docks 1 through 6, dredging, paving maintenance and replacement, so on, some significant numbers that we want to look at. And certainly the numbers get bigger as we move out at Oyster Point into 17, 18 and beyond, because now to orient the Commission on the public, the ferry terminal, to the east of the ferry terminal is dock 11. To the east of 11 is 12, 13, and then 14, which is just basically half a dock. Dock 11 was replaced in its entirety as part of the mitigation for the loss of slips in the building of the ferry terminal. Docks 12, 13, and 14 are not as in good shape as dock 11, and dock 11 is at 100% occupancy with waiting list, and while other docks have got vacancies. So what I did in this project, and thinking forward again, is to say we should staff recommending looking at replacing docks 12, 13, and 14. So we put some planning and engineering into this year, and then using the number for the replacement of dock 12 with a little inflation factor for dock 13, and then a smaller number for dock 14 because it is only half a dock. And then spreading out that replacement of those docks through 2019-20. One of the things worth noticing and pointing out is that this is a standalone expense document. We have not identified which specific reserves, which potential grants, in which years we'd be able to use net revenue over expense in the current year to fund any of these projects. So as I go up again, I'd like to point out, and I'm going to expand it out again as we talk about pillar points. There are certain of these items that I have bolded and underlined. And these are items that staff believes are priority items. And I'm happy to go through them one by one. I think starting at the top up here, I think it would be very important for us in an aging facility like Pillar Point to go throughout the entire facility and do a survey for ADA conditions and identify the highest priority accessibility issues that we face. HDOC, as you're walking out on the pier, before you get to the fuel facility on the left-hand side, HDOC is the one immediately this side of that, landward of that. And the issue with HDOC is that it was constructed in the days when boats of a certain size could be expected to come in. We're seeing a lot of commercial boats now are coming in wider and wider, and so we're getting slips with the separation in between the fingers that was sufficient in the days of narrow boats to fit two boats side by side. Now we're getting boats coming in and they're taking up 3/4 of the space. So we're ending up losing usable space, and it's in somewhat parlous condition. So we'd like to look at doing some planning and engineering on that and replacement in 17-18.
Is HDOC the charter boat dock? The dock with charter boats, or is that the dock before the charter boats?
It's a boat with charter docks. So,
It is
I mean,
charter
not
boat.
the boat with charter docks, the
And
dock with
the
charter
majority of
boats.
the boats there are commercial. There's only about 5 or 6 charter boats.
So the dock before you get to dock H,
That's G dock.
G dock, has really significant problems, and that's the dock where the public has contacted me about their concerns, because that's the dock that more of our public members use to buy fish direct from fishermen. So they traverse down that dock and up the dock to buy fish off boats. And there are a couple of finger docks that are completely wonky, but I see you have that here too. That G is going to be seriously redone because it's extremely dangerous, and we're inviting the public to access the docks to buy fish. So is that also part of the plan?
This is precisely why I had intended to have Assistant Harbor Master Draper and Merlo here. And unfortunately they're not. I do know that we have permits, we've received permits to replace 12 dock fingers. We haven't done that yet. And I apologize, Commissioner, I've made a note to check in to see if that's G-dock.
G-dock.
But I can't answer that definitively.
Okay.
You'll notice from the sheet that you've got here that I had pier deck and piling replacement with a note that it's the refrigeration area, fender piles, and work dock. And I had that starting in 17-18 and then in 18-19. Then I went on to the work dock and looked under that section. And what we've got there is we've got an L-shaped pier that is predominantly concrete deck and concrete pilings. In this one area where the refrigeration units are to the south or actually to the east of the Fish Buyers building. There's an area there that is wooden dock, and those refrigeration units are sitting on that wooden dock. And what I would like to do is very soon actually do a pile condition survey on those wooden piles, and then I believe that it'll be necessary to move those $250,000 numbers into this current, the next fiscal year, 16-17, and then 17-18. And after looking at that, rather than changing these numbers, I just added this note saying that that $250,000 number may be too conservative. But I think that from what I saw, that has become a high priority project from my perspective, of deferred facilities maintenance.
About the work dock, it does appear that it's rotten underneath it, and some of the piers aren't connecting and things. I noticed here that you have portion of Tiger. Does that mean Grant?
Yes, now I've got, where did I have Tiger in?
Under Johnson Pier work dock area. Replace water domestic to float from pier, including flex lines under that.
Okay, yes. I looked at the Tiger grant application that we submitted and were unsuccessful, and recognized that that actually increased some square footage out of the end of the pier and allowed for greater facility of movement of trucks. It was a large grant application. It involved everything from dock space there out to intersection improvements at Capistrano and Highway 1. The reason that I put it back in there with funding in the next couple of years after that is because I did get notice last Friday that a renamed, a retitled Tiger Grant program is opening up. Information here. And the feds love their acronyms. So there's a new program actually called the Fast Lane Grant Program. This is the Fixing America's Surface Transportation Act. That's $800 million in rural projects, projects of regional significance, multi-year eligibilities for freight infrastructure, systems to move materials, small projects, minimum award of $5 million. Applications due April 14th. Tiger grants, this is now called the National Infrastructure Investments Program, and basically the same as Tiger. So in fact, the Department of Transportation is going to continue to call it Tiger just to try to avoid confusion. Begs the question of why they didn't just leave it called Tiger in the first place, but here we go. So funding for 2016 Tiger is $500 million, reduces the minimum grant to $5 million from $10 million, and the applications are due for that on April 29th. We've got a lot of the information in place. I did talk to the Half Moon Bay Seafood Marketing Association today to determine what their approach would be to a revised application to Tiger this year. And I think the message I got very clearly was that with involvement of the stakeholders, they end up being supportive as long as it was a reasonable project, as opposed to last time, which we don't need to revisit. So, yes, this part, I moved this at about 4:30. Mm-hmm. Okay, so this part, the Johnson Pier Work Dock portion of Tiger Grant, these could combine, absolutely. Absolutely. And this is why it's great that we're doing this March 2nd. We've got till June 30th from 2016. And then also, some of these grant applications that will go in, we won't hear about awards until after the start of the fiscal year, and then we'd come back to the commission
Do you know what the plan is for the freezers if we're going to replace the dock where the freezers are located now?
Not yet.
Okay, just wondering.
I mean, there'll have to be one.
Mm-hmm.
There'll have to be one that'll address the timing I mean, on and on. So there's many multiple moving parts in that, but yeah, don't have that plan yet. Again, this is one where I wish that Assistant Harbor Master Draper was here, replacing the water, the domestic water. We've got two kinds of water out there. We've got fire water and domestic water, and this is domestic water to the floats from the pier, including flex lines. Not a significant issue, but one that John felt needed to be in the 2016 budget. Electrical underground. We've got in the parking lot. We've got electrical boxes in the parking lot. We can't access them. They're so old, lids are stuck. We need to get in there, cut around those boxes, take them out, replace new boxes. John's estimating that would be $75,000. And so I skipped over the one that you were just talking about, Commissioner Brennan. And again, that one could well be incorporated with the one in row 9. Paving maintenance and replacement. This is one that you'll see when we get to the Oyster Point Marina as well. Our pavement is in poor condition, generally, our asphalt in our parking lots. And so staff would really like to prioritize working on some of that. And as we look at this, the first area that John showed me actually was from the boat ramp, the road coming back towards the harbor. And interestingly, the side of the asphalt heading out to the boat ramp is in fairly good condition. The side of the asphalt heading back from the boat ramp is not, because the side heading back from the boat ramp gets dripped on with salt water on a regular and ongoing basis, and that deteriorates the asphalt. We want a pavement engineer to come in and develop specs and scope for us on that. These numbers are what we in the business call WAGs, and may adjust, but I think that we should be able to do quite a bit of work with the $200,000 in this year and then $100,000 in each consecutive year. What I didn't put in here, and I should have done, is then to start putting in some smaller numbers so that we're on a regular pattern of, if we put in a bunch of new asphalt here, if we've taken a section of our parking lot, ground it up, recompacted the base, put down a new 2 inches of asphalt, or simply done a 2-inch overlay on the existing parking lot, by the time we're getting to here, in the 2021 year, we want to come back here and seal that to protect it, so that we don't end up in the situation again for many years where we could be falling apart. One of the things that staff brought up was the entrance signage at Highway 1 in Capistrano. Not a high priority project, but we do have a boat there, and it does signify the entrance to the harbor. Staff would recognize that is eventually going to do as all organic materials do and return to the earth, and we should have a plan for replacing with some sort of monument sign or signature identifier the entrance to the harbor there at Highway 1 in Capistrano.
Can I chime in real quick on that? I just wanted to, because I know you're new, mention that in the past we've got really very, what I would describe as strong public input that the public, Mid-Coast Council, so on and so forth, does not want an electronic sign. I don't know if that was something you were thinking of.
No.
And then also, in addition to that being a very high visibility corner where we should identify the name of the harbor we are now, that's important. The signage when you come into the harbor is probably from the 1970s, and there are now, somebody put some really cute little names up on the very top of all the different businesses, but it's hard to see, and it seems like there should be a new approach for the signage.
The monument sign, you mean, the sign that lists all the businesses?
The entry signage, yeah, because that's not effective, and it's really, the names of all the businesses are up so high that you can't really see them. And it's just a really outdated sign.
Okay. Interesting, storm drain box replacements. Again, good thing to do. They're old boxes. This would improve our stormwater management, improve the results of our first flush and sampling, but recognizing the long list of high priority projects, we did not bold or underline that. Light pole retrofits to LED, $150,000. At one point, apparently, we have 13 light standards in a row that are burned out, and we've replaced a number of them with LED. We did get a quote to complete the project and replace all the lights. There would be significant power savings in that, but we think that that's a high priority item. Exterior building painting, this would be going throughout the harbor for $150,000. Again, a WAG in 1718, not a high priority project today, but certainly something we want to keep on the radar. There's apparently been discussion about a new laundry facility. Want to keep that on the radar again, but pushing it out to 1920-21. Replacement truck. Again, we need a truck, and so that's underlined. We need that now, actually, and then we'll need a new electric car by the time we get out to 19.
Is there any plan for landscaping? Because it seems like that's something that we never look at Pillar Point Harbor, and we've lost some trees, and things are looking pretty rough. Wondering, I know there's a gopher problem, I'm aware of that.
Right.
But there are things you can do to put landscaping in containers so that you don't have to worry about gophers.
I'd like to think that we could do that out of our just regular operations and maintenance budget, as opposed to identifying it as a capital project.
Okay.
But I've noticed the same thing. Flow meters on the sewer lift stations. This is apparently a requirement. I'm not sure where the requirement is coming from. I wish, again, John was here. But basically, what we want to know is how much effluent we're pumping out of our sewer lift stations. Without flow meters, what one does is one tracks the pump hours, how many hours is the pump operating, and makes estimates of the amount of effluent pushed through in an hour of pump operation. A flow meter is a much more accurate way of measuring that. Again, something that would be great to do would be a remodeling of the launch ramp restrooms, trench drains to the boat ramp area. We've got the specs apparently. This would be an installation project only, and simply a maintenance project. Romeo Pier. We know that we're working on the permits right now with Army Corps and Coastal Commission to demolish that pier. We do have a preliminary engineer's estimate of $600,000 to take the buildings off the end of the pier only. That doesn't take the pier down. And I think it's very easy to say, why does it cost $600,000 to take down a couple of buildings? Well, if you think about the fact that mobilization, demobilization for equipment like barge-mounted cranes is very expensive. Those barge-mounted cranes are going to have to come around from the bay because there's no way of working on that project from the pier itself. So bringing in a barge-mounted crane, taking down those buildings safely, putting the debris onto another barge, and then taking it and disposing of it gets expensive very quickly. Very quickly. Equipment costs, everything else. Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, because this is the first I've heard of the barge-mounted crane, if that makes sense. If we were going to pay to have a barge-mounted crane come all the way in and remove the buildings, why wouldn't we just remove the whole thing?
That's a very good point. And at this point, I've got this number in because that's the engineer's estimate, and certainly we'd want to capitalize on that if we possibly can. One of the things that we might want to think about in the future is what do we have if we have removed a fundamental safety issue but left the piles in the water? What we've got is a development footprint. If we take all the piles out, we have a clean slate. If we have piles in the water, would it be possible then to get permits to come back and rebuild something as an extremely glorified maintenance or repair project?
A question about that. We don't have the rights to access the pier, so what about that?
except for the fact that we can't get to the pier. That's exactly
We don't own the
correct.
property.
The things that I find out as I go along are interesting, to say the least.
I'll say.
Certainly that would be part of that conversation. How do we get to it if we do that? Ways of tying it in with other projects, with part of Plan Princeton, those sort of things.
Moving back on up what you just previously discussed, I got a public comment from Catherine Slater Carter on LED lighting and sewer.
Okay, great, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I just thought I'd pass a little more information on to you. The Mid-Coast Community Council has been working very hard on the issue of LED lighting in the streets and with the county, and so they have figured out which LED lighting is the least offensive to the community. They may want to get in touch with Jim Porter of the county to see which LED.
Name?
Jim Porter.
Director of Public Works.
Thank you.
And the other, under Sewer Left Station, I'm speaking as an individual, but I am a board member at Sewer Authority Mid-Coast side. And we just did a fairly extensive and expensive study of saltwater levels at various of our pump stations, because we're looking at a recycled water project. And the Princeton pump station was where the salt water level was absolutely the highest. It's the pump station on the road out to Mavericks. So you might want to get together with the new director of the Sewer Authority Mid-Coast side to talk about that, Beverly.
We're going to lunch date a couple of weeks from now.
Okay, good, because she's very knowledgeable. We were shocked and amazed at how much salt water was coming in, and we've directed our engineers to see if it's on a tidal basis or what.
Okay.
So it might be an
Thank you.
opportunity for the two districts to work together.
Thank you for that.
I'd just like to pick up really quick on that comment about the LED lighting. I forgot to mention that it has been a big issue on the coast side because the county is switching to LED lighting, which is great, and I think everybody supports that. But there is, now we have many different choices of LED light color, which if you go to the hardware store to buy your LED lights, you'll find that there are all kinds of different LED lights on the market now, which are awesome. So the bright white is not something that people like for LED lighting in public spaces because it is really glaring. And so the Mid-Coast Council, I haven't been in on all this, but they have been studying LED lighting and they have come up with the best possible scenario for LED on the coast side. So it would be great to pick their brains and find out.
Will do. Not a fan of the bright white myself, because there is an issue with, foot candles on the ground and the spread and the.
They've studied all this.
Good, great. Dredging. One of the things that I became aware of as I looked around at our staff, Emily, has been pulling together dredging information for me, is that we have taken a sort of a spot approach to dredging, and we get a permit to dredge here, and then we get a permit to dredge here. And what I'd like to embark on is a program to develop a permit that is a maintenance permit for dredging harbor-wide. And it would identify dredge sites and dredge disposal sites. And then if we can get that done in a year, I'd like that ideally also to be a multi-year permit so that we don't have to do it every year. If we can possibly get that out of Coastal Commission and the Army Corps of Engineers. There's some studying to be done with that on sediment size and sampling and so on and so forth. It's a fairly involved project. But if we did that, then at the beginning of every dredge operation, we'd simply send notifications to the permitting authorities, and then we could proceed with our dredging. And then just, again, wags on what we might do in future years in the way of dredging.
Could I just comment on that really quick. So one of the things that has been, I think, frustrating for the community is that there is no sanctuary permit required to move material as long as it tests clean enough and is the right size sand granule to the Princeton shoreline where we have a really significant erosion problem. So that's an area, I'm thrilled to hear that you want to put together a comprehensive plan, because that's an area where we don't have any limitations. We could move material as long as we had a plan and everything was tested, you know, right away. Obviously, there is a need to move material outside of the harbor so that we can recirculate in the system and get, hopefully get material replenishing some of the beaches that have been so eroded in Miramar and Surfers Beach, of course. But obviously that's more complicated because we have to have permission from the sanctuaries, so that's a longer term fix. But I'm just really glad to hear you say that we could start to come up with a plan for that.
The other resource you didn't mention, Commissioner Brennan, is the money. We've got to allocate the money. The further you've got to move sediment spoils, the more it costs. You know, can you do it through a compact pipe? Do you have to barge it, transport it, and drop it? I mean, I'm sure Commissioner Bernardo knows as much about this as anybody, because the Port of Oakland is, I mean, it's key to the Port of Oakland's livelihood, in fact, is dredging and appropriation of funds from the Army Corps.
Monterey Harbor has their own dredge operation, and they have offered to rent it to us in the past. I don't know if it's the appropriate equipment, but it's something to think about.
And Santa Cruz has got some equipment too. So there are options out there, absolutely. But the first thing is the plan and the permits. So we'd like to start cleaning up our maintenance yard area. The oil spill trailer, this is a great thing. This is a small, tow-along trailer behind a truck. I doubt if the trailer is 12 to 15 feet long. It's enclosed, and inside that trailer are boom and the kitty litter that you can put on the ground and the pads that you can float on the water, and it sits and it's primed, ready to go. This is a grant program through the Office of Spill Prevention and Response in the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and it's completely funded and comes with training for management and operation of that. Great program. You'll see this repeat down at Oyster Point as well.
Does it need a truck to move it, or is it like a hand?
No, it definitely needs a truck. Oh, by the way, we need a truck. Here's one that I know has been subject to quite a bit of conversation. Sidewalk improvements on the promenade and enlarging the sidewalks in the commercial area. And this second one in particular, I know, has been discussed as a $35,000 project just to widen the sidewalk in front of Catch Joanne's and Princeton Seafood. The reason that I bumped the numbers up with a note, investigate alternatives and subject to vision and strategic plan, is that I think that these two items are integrally related, and that the first thing that we need is an overall vision of what Pillow Point Harbor is going to look like, rather than piecemealing and boxing ourselves in. And it may be that we come up with a vision that might take 10 years to implement, and then we would determine that $30,000 or $40,000 to enlarge a piece of sidewalk is, even though it would be undone at some point in the future, will be a worthwhile investment, but we need to know that first. Additionally, I know the Coastal Commission, and I know how they look at parking. And I know that the loss of any parking in a place as impacted as Pillow Point Harbor will be a significant concern to the Coastal Commission. So even if it's only 8 places, or 8 spots, or 10 spots, they will be paying attention to that. And to take away 10 spots that will maybe make people turn away and not visit the coast in exchange for tables to sell more food, it's going to, I'm not going to say they wouldn't approve it, but they're going to pay attention and want to talk about it a lot. And so I think that as we look at the entire Pillar Point Harbor and all the pavement areas, we've got little areas like the area behind the row of restaurants and Catch where we've got a chain across the road. How can we incorporate that and create some parking there? And how are we best using it, and how do we integrate the flow of traffic through all of that? I do know that this was not a project that this commission prioritized in our goals and objectives session.
But we actually approved the project. We voted to approve it.
You voted to approve the sidewalk expansion?
Yeah.
Yes, I understand. And what I'm suggesting at this point, and if the commission directs me to proceed with the sidewalk expansion and sidewalk expansion only, which would be the item number 38, then the $150,000 would come down, and the first step would be to get a drawing and go to the Coastal Commission seeking approval.
I'd just like to
We did just get a public comment related to item 6, and I believe it's related to the sidewalk.
It is, and if Sabrina would like to share first, I'm okay with that. I mean, I can go right now.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to remind everybody that the reason that the board, one of the primary reasons the board approved the sidewalk expansion project, well, there were 2 reasons. The first was because we have a significant ADA problem. We are not providing ADA access right now. I've seen wheelchairs trying to get by, and it's just very cramped. And so we really have to expand the sidewalk to make room for safe passage. And we also need to have ramps for people in wheelchairs so that they don't have to be physically lifted up onto the sidewalk. Secondly, we are earning money off the sidewalk because there are tables there, and we are turning tables because people like to sit outside and enjoy the view, and it just brings in revenue for the district. So it might seem as though this project costs money, but in the end, it actually makes us money. So this is a revenue generating project, and that's why the board voted to move forward with it, because it generates revenue and it solves an ADA problem. As far as the concerns about the Coastal Commission go, while it's true that the Coastal Commission prioritizes access to the waterfront, they very much support ADA access to the waterfront. And so if we aren't providing safe ADA access, then we're not doing our job. And as far as the parking goes, I mean, we're not talking about very many parking spots, so it seems like with a little creativity, which I think Steve just alluded to, there could be a reconfiguring to address squeezing in a few more spots to make up for the parking. Although generally, I think we do have a lot of parking, and if we crack down on some of the businesses that were nearby that were telling their employees to park in our parking areas, and that's been written about a lot lately on Nextdoor. Some of the business owners have been telling their employees to park at Pillar Point Harbor and to walk to work because they need the parking for their customers. Well, what about our customers? You know, so that's something that we need to be following up on so that we do have parking for our customers. So those are my comments.
Yep.
We do have a state question for you from Commissioner Chen Crawley.
Just a quick, so how long would something like this take from start to finish to enlarge this?
The construction part will be very straightforward. If you visualize that stretch of sidewalk,
Yeah.
I think it is, especially to address Commissioner Brennan's concerns about ADA, I think, certainly if the commissioner wanted just access up and down the sidewalk, then it would be very simple. We remove the tables. That doesn't address, A, the public service that the tables
Right.
provide, or B, the revenue that we and the businesses generate. So we need a wider sidewalk. How do we incorporate that? And when I looked at it, I envisioned not just the entire thing, but a bulb out in a large section of the middle so that we could maintain a couple of ADA spots, parking spots at either end of that strip of sidewalk. The construction part is really straightforward and would probably be done in 10 days. I mean,
Okay,
it's really
so it's
that
fast.
simple.
Okay,
But we would need to get the plans, permits, and then bidding.
okay.
And that would take, and the big unknown in there, the bidding can take 30 days.
Yeah,
Plans, very straightforward.
so like in a quarter, that would be on the quick side. in one
That would be on
quarter.
that would be on the very quick side, because what we don't know is what the coastal commission would
Yeah.
want to see or do or address.
I'm just
And I
hoping
think if we could
they'll,
identify replacement parking, like in that little section up behind the restaurants that leads to the chain entrance, and if we could show a quid pro quo, I think it would go a lot more smoothly.
I'm just trying to figure out, I mean, can we get this done before the summer, right? Before that kind of thing, because I think it's very beneficial to do that.
I think it's very beneficial, and if you directed us to do it before the summer, I'd come back to you and say.
Yeah, no, I know, so I'm just trying to
What would you like
understand the
us not to do?
time frame. Yeah. Thank you.
We have another public comment on item 6 from Bud Ratz.
Just the city of Mountain View and the city of South Coast, they use planters and stuff and just boxed off the parking spaces and put tables in there and so on. And I really, for that $150,000 is spent, with some solution like that, it'd be 10 or 15,000. Choose the same goal, would clean out and give access, because I would really endorse Steve's long-term site plan for the project. And some of those areas in the city of Mountain View were there for over 2 years.
And they're doing it in San Francisco all the time.
Yeah.
They're just moving out.
And that accomplishes both objectives.
I think they call them parklets, oftentimes, they just take up a parking space.
And if we did that,
Good
we
idea,
could
we could
just,
look at that.
we could just put in
And
the
that would be
ramps
fast.
at the sidewalk that already exists.
Asphalt ramp in your home.
And then there could even be tables out on the
I
parking.
think that would
Well,
be,
that's why
that would
they
be
put
the
the
idea.
tables in the parking.
Yeah.
And then leave the park, and leave the sidewalk clear.
Yeah.
I'll look into that.
But Albert had a comment,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah,
He had a
he had a
speaker's-
public comment.
Is that
He
the
said that
proper
he
chair?
ceded to
Or is
you.
my voice
That's your
on, that's the proper chair?
No.
I'm just glad that this came up, because it's been
No, I
something
said
that's been
he
on the
ceded to
agenda for many years, and I'm also glad that I had you start first, bouncing it back and forth, because really I have nothing else to say other than approximately 70 to 100 people eat on that sidewalk. And everyone has to walk around the cars to the backside, so regardless of ADA, people can't even pass through appropriately. And I know everyone's about the ADA, which always pushes everything through, but without rushing, without taking too long, I think a plan for the harbor would provide the income and the pass-through and the safety. So, I mean, Lacey, you guys covered it, I'll be sitting in the chair, but I love the camera and it was time.
Thank you.
I got some good ideas there, thank you very much. Fishing pier, I think this is something we need to get started on, this sloughing off of the revetment underneath that fishing pier. It's canting to one side a bit. We need to start developing a plan there to do some work here. And could we then think about this note over here about cantilevering the deck. The deck is built on top of the riprap and it's quite narrow. And I think it was probably fine when it was built. Without widening the footprint of the riprap, would it be possible to stabilize the riprap and then build a wider walkway on top of that, cantilevering on both sides, that would provide passing width and ADA and so on and so forth. I'd like to get started on that, but we do need to get started on that project. Here we go.
Steve is so excited to hear you.
I've kept
Water rescue, we've all been underwater, so.
I kept having to say, I don't know, wish John was here. Yeah, well, thanks for showing up, you guys. I'd like to introduce, for the benefit of the public, Assistant Harbor Master John Draper, Assistant Harbor Master Jim Merlo, and Deputy Harbour Master Carrie Smith, and these were, in particular, the three gentlemen that I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting when I did a shout out for the work that they all did at the Maverick Surf Competition. So, anyway, thanks for being here. So we'd like to get started on that. The next one here is the Radon rebuild. I think it's a matter that's near and dear to Assistant Harbour Master Draper's heart. The radon is currently out of the water. The equipment is stripped off it. It's non-operational. There's $100,000 in 2015-16, our current year budget, for repairs on that boat. We got a very preliminary estimate from the boat builder, Radon Boat Works in Santa Barbara, without looking at the electronics or the motors, to basically provide us with a new boat. And it would be, and I think I'm going to be coming to this commission in April to seek an additional authorization of about $30,000 to $35,000 so that we could send that boat down to Radon Boat Works this year and get that body work started. We can then spend time speccing the electronics and motors and applying for grants from DBW, which once done, we could then figure out how best to fold that into that project, either through separate contract or some other means. So we think the total project cost is likely to be about $350,000, and that's including the $100,000 that is in the budget this year. I moved it into the 16-17 budget, however, because even though we may get the boat down there this year, we're not going to spend $100,000 this year, so I moved it into that next year. John, if you wanted to add anything about that boat, that project.
The whole project will take about a year. We want to strip the decks, cabin, and the bulwarks off the boat, so it'll just be the hull, and then he'll rebuild it. We want to get it down there before summertime, so it has time to dry out. It is a 1972 year Radon. He just rebuilt a 1974 boat, and it's unbelievable. They don't make boats like this again, and never will. And we love the boat, and we'd like to see it get rebuilt.
The alternative being?
Well, the alternative is to spend 3 times that amount for a new boat, which will not be the same type of boat. It'll be a lot lighter, and we feel it's worth it to have this one rebuilt and buy a new boat.
I have a question. I was able to, I've been on the boat, and I'm really glad this is on the list, because what worries me is that we're down to 1 boat right now. So if the Harbor Patrol is out on the water doing a rescue and something were to get out of hand, or there was an emergency with our 1 boat, there would not be a secondary boat to come out and rescue. And that just seems to me like an unsafe situation, given how dangerous the conditions are on the Pacific Ocean. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to get that boat to the repair place ASAP. And I'm wondering also if there was another boat available from some other, I don't know, maybe the sheriffs or somebody that we could borrow. Is there any way we could borrow a boat?
Well, there's not a boat that we can borrow, but there's boats that are available for us to use. The sheriffs have a boat at the harbor presently, Fish and Game, has a boat there. So there's other agencies that have vessels in the water that we can use, but we couldn't borrow it on a long-term basis, as a need basis.
So if you had that emergency happen where you needed to take out a second boat, do you have like the keys to their boat and you can actually use it, or do you would call them and they come and help? How does that work?
Yes.
We're not going to say the horrible truth about boat owners and the keys.
Their boats are in the harbor. We keep them all in the same area of the dock there.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen the Fish and Game, you've seen the sheriff's boats. We've talked to the sheriffs, we've talked to Fish and Game. we'd have to make a phone call. We can't just jump on the boats and take it.
Okay,
We have to call them, know that.
notify them.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
Next on the list, this is, now we're going out here to revisiting our 5-year condition survey. And certainly as we're doing projects, we're not developing just new sets of prints, we're also developing new files. But anybody who's been in that building knows that we've got a veritable stockpile of old plans, and it's going to be great to have all of those digitized. Some of them we'll never look at again, but some of them we don't need to store them. But
Where are we at on the list here?
we're at conversion of construction docs and blueprints to electronic. Over here.
Just above the bottom.
Okay, oh, I see it.
Yep. That's sort of a wish list item. And then the last item under the Pillar Point Harbor totals is the Trail to Mavericks. As you know, we have just completed a project to repair under an emergency coastal development permit a section of the trail. And we did sort of one end of it. The Coastal Commission is requiring that we go back to them by the end of July with a plan for a permanent repair. And then that plan may be the permanent repair is leaving in place the temporary, the work that we did under the emergency coastal development permit. But they're making us look at the hydrology of the area, which means that we've got to work with the Air Force on the land at the top of the bluff and their drainage patterns down into what was clearly one time a functioning drainage system, but not currently. Additionally, are there opportunities for improving the parking lot, building permanent restrooms, and addressing the other issues of erosion along the trail. So that's why I put this in working with other agencies here and stakeholders to start some planning here and maybe start some construction here. Yeah.
Just wonder, I know you had mentioned that you were planning to meet with Kellex from the Resource Conservation District, and
Yes.
I was just thinking maybe she would have some thoughts on some of the hillside erosion and runoff that's happening. They've had some success with some of their erosion mitigation projects, and then also water quality, like runoff, water quality
Right.
projects.
Right, yeah, yeah. Okay, so, I mean, this one certainly has got a regulatory component as a part of it. You know, we do have to come back to them by the end of July. It would be great to be able to not just focus on that one little area of our emergency coastal development permit, though, but to look at the bigger picture of the whole trail before we lose it. So, as you can see, that for Pillar Point, that adds up to quite a bit. This is not just the bold and highlighted items, but all items would involve spending about $3.3 million in 16-17, and then varying numbers through the end of the cycle there. So next up we got Oyster Point. And again, the fundamental assumption here is that we can continue operating Oyster Point in terms of the JPA. And certainly there are obligations that go along with that. Like, it's very clear that the JPA calls for us to maintain the trails and the parking lots. So we'll come to that in a minute. But again, in the way of looking forward, golf carts. You know, we've got 3. We need to start replacing those in 17, 18, 18, 19, and 19, 20. We need a truck. $40,000 again. The ideal there would be to go out and spec both those trucks simultaneously and get quotes for the 2 trucks and see if we can get some sort of little savings by virtue of the fact we're buying 2 at the same time. Jim Merlot, who's here, has identified we're going to need a new landscaping tractor, but that's off the right-hand end of our chart here. It's always good to put these things on when they come up so that we can track them and remember that we had it on the chart at one point. I talked at the beginning as an example of how we look at this, replacements of docks 12, 13, and 14. And again, those are the ones east of the newly rebuilt dock 11, and the dock 14 is a lower number simply because it's only half a dock. It's only got fingers on one side. During the plans and specs part, certainly one of the things that Jim and I talked about is the possibility of looking at how that dock functions and configures the best use of that. What is the demand? Demand for larger spaces, for side ties? Could we delete some of the fingers and create some more larger side tie type facilities, I guess? Yeah. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. So, but that'll come out as part of the planning process here.
Which dock is it that, you know, there's that one dock that's right next to the launch ramp? What is that one called?
Dock 14, there's dock 13 and 14, the launch ramps between the two.
Okay.
So that's the furthest eastern end of the marina.
I'm talking about the launch ramp that has the flooding problem.
That's in the west basin, that's the different basins. So if you look at the Harbor Masters Peninsula, that separates the two basins. That's the west basin and the east basin. All this dock replacement would be in the east basin.
So all the dock replacements are in the
East basin.
What this is showing, at this point, yes.
the east basin.
Which would be
Okay,
down toward the bait shop.
got it, okay.
It actually is even east of the ferry terminal as well.
Yeah, it's all east of the ferry terminal.
Okay, so none of the docks that are having the current flooding issues would be part of that?
No.
Okay.
What we did bold and underline was the transformers on docks 1 through 6. And that is on the west side of the basin, so that's on the other side so we've got the ferry terminal. This side is the west basin heading towards the beach area, this side is the east basin heading towards the bay. So the big numbers up here are in the east basin, docks 1 through 6 transformers for $250,000. That's on the west basin, and this is a fundamental maintenance project. Aging electrical equipment, aging boxes housing our electrical equipment needs to be replaced on all 6 of those docks. Anything to add to that, Jim?
I looked into, so the enclosures are what are rotting, and I looked into getting custom enclosures made, and it's not cost effective. They have to build these enclosures, and then the cost of labor to remove the transformer, put the new switch gear in and all that kind of stuff, it's not cost effective to do that. So what we found is I've gotten just off the cuff quotes at about $20,000 per transformer without labor, and that's with distribution in. So we put in that number there to hopefully cover all the labor and all the costs.
Well, could you explain where the transformers, are they on the actual docks?
So they're on the docks, just about halfway out on each dock. So each dock has one transformer.
What about the electrical that's being submerged due to the land subsiding and sea level rise? What do we need to do anything to replace any of that?
Well, what we've tried to protect any of those splices the best we can by putting waterproof sealing bags over them and stuff like that. And knock on some wood here, so far any of the main feeds that go to the docks that have been submerged haven't failed. So our protection on those has held up. The issues that we find sometimes is in some of the street lighting. In the area lighting, there's so many connections. It just pigtails off in every single box. So there's a lot more connections. Whereas the major feeds going to the docks, there's probably 1 or 2 splices from the switchgear to the docks. So you don't have as many places for it to fail. So we haven't seen any of those issues.
Thank you.
Again, that one's bolded and underlined, so we'd really like to see monies appropriated for that. West restroom remodels, this was something we put in for 17-18. $6 certainly, any of these projects of 17 and 18 and beyond, part of the planning document, final decisions won't get made until this time, or until this process next year for 17, 18 column and so on. But there. Bait shop. We put in $60,000 there. I do say over here, it's dependent on the results of the RFP. We sent off an RFP, draft RFP, to the Division of Burden and Waterways. Last week, we received approval of that document so we can get it out, and then we can look at the responses that we get and determine whether this $60,000, which would take that existing building and repair the inside, replace some of the siding, replace some of the dry rot, paint the exterior, fix the roof, do ceiling tiles,
Re-roof, ceiling tiles.
basically provide a decent shell, for that building. Jim has done a lot of work on figuring out estimates on that, and that would be about $50,000, $60,000. Now the thing is, in any of these lease situations, when you do an RFP, somebody may have a completely different vision, and one person may come in and say, well, I want to tear this building down, it doesn't suit me, I want to put up a new building, I'm going to invest $400,000, but in exchange for that I want a 30-year lease. Another person might come in and say, well, I'm going to work with this building and I need you to do it because I don't have the capital up front. It's all going to come out in the wash in the way that the rent deal as part of the lease is negotiated. If we put in money, we want more rent. If they put in the money, we should expect less rent because at the end of the day, we inherit the facility. So that's why this is here as a placeholder, but we should have a clearer idea by the time we get to doing any of that work, whether or not that's something that we would be spending money on or the new tenant would be spending money on.
Can you remind us what the length of the lease was we were considering, how many years?
Did you include that in the
I don't think it's
RFP?
part of the RFP, I think it's all going to be part of the proposals and the subsequent negotiation, which, by the way, under current circumstances, which I hope change, the final lease also has to go to DDW.
Right. Does, because our JPA is up in 10 years, are we in communication with the city of South San Francisco? Because wouldn't it be wise to not lock them into a lease if they wanted to do something different with the property?
I would absolutely not recommend that this district approve a 30-year lease without close consultation with the city of South San Francisco. Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, looking out, revisiting the 5-year condition survey. Harbor dredging, start planning for future dredging activities in the subsequent 3 years. One of the reasons Jim will be able to say this is that there is a comparatively convenient disposal site for the dredge spoils at Alcatraz. There is it more than rumor or is it fact?
It's going to be fact.
It's going to be fact.
The timing is they just don't know when.
That dump site will close. When that dump site closes, dredge spoils will have to go outside the bay for offshore disposal, and that will increase our costs significantly. So we know we've got several areas that we need to dredge. When did we last dredge in the Oyster Pond?
06?
06.
06, and then the WETA came in
Okay, so that was 06 for the last time we dredged, and then Weta did some dredging for the thermal project. And so if we do this, and if we can avail ourselves of the Alcatraz dump site, we'll be good for quite a while. Paving maintenance and replacement. Again, this is akin to the conversation about the paving maintenance at Pillar Point. ties into a number of other factors, but basically some of the paving is done in such a state that it's beyond being slurry sealed. It needs to be the existing pavement taken up, ground up, new base, new grading, and then new asphalt. And that is, probably with the exception of the wetter parking lot, true of all of the public parking areas there.
Pretty much.
Yeah. And some of them are in worse condition than others, and some may be able to live for a few more years with some slurry sealing. But I was looking at some of the parking lot today that most definitely needs basically starting over. And so this sort of project where, again, WACs, I want to emphasize that, but $100,000 a year for the next 3 years, and then $10,000 a year. This is the placeholder, so that when we get to this year here, we can come back here and slurry seal our new asphalt to maintain and preserve it.
I have a question about the asphalt. So one of the things that's happening at Oyster Point because of the subsidence is the asphalt is sinking, so it's dipping and uneven in some places. And also the water board is waiting for some plan to mitigate some of the subsidence problems. Are we going to make sure that we're not just putting new asphalt on top of something that's going to have fill added to it later? I mean, where's the sense? And it seems like we would need to do a comprehensive evaluation of when it's appropriate to put new asphalt down, because if fill has to be added, it would certainly not make sense to do new asphalt and then have to completely redo it after fill is added.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. Not a fan of wasting money. Some of the remediation factors that have been looked at, for example, in some of the areas are, not so much fill as how do we stop the water getting there. The water isn't coming in directly from the bay. It might be backing up through some of our drainage areas. If we have operating check valves, can we prevent that water from inundating that parking lot? Because if the check valve in the storm system is operating, the water can't get there. We've got one parking lot area now that is simply unsafe. Unsafe is too strong, but it's in very poor condition. And
which parking lot is that?
That would be at the west end, opposite docks, like 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, so the area that you, I know what the flooding is, if you were to go to the southeast of that is where it is. So there's a center divide there, it's a French drain that runs right down the center of the park.
Oh, it's up above it a little bit?
No, it would be on the opposite. If you were looking to the west, it would be on the left side of the mountain. It's all degraded really bad, there's a lot of potholes. And that is where most of our attention would go.
Yeah, certainly at the beginning. And is the rest of the commission clear with the area we're talking about? The ferry terminal is behind me here, the marina is over here. I'm standing on a sort of a cobbled strip in between parking areas that is in fact a French drain that collects water, and it's this parking lot on this side of me that is in the worst condition of the lot.
Well, that in particular is an area that, from what I've heard, is going to potentially need fill. So I would hope that we would not move forward with doing anything until we know what the water board might require as far as fill is concerned.
Yeah. The furthest south side of that is basically what we've got a whoopsie-doo, and I mean, there's other issues, and this is one of those areas where I talked about with the check valves, because that's how the water is getting into that parking lot, backing up through a storm drain system at king tide. So we get operable check valves, we prevented that, and that would be key to fixing that problem, because we don't want to put in brand new asphalt and have inundation happening on top of it. So
You're absolutely right, Commissioner. So before any work would be done back there, it would have to be all shot level, figure out your falls and your grading, and that grading would have to be done before any asphalt would be laid. The reason for that is if you put asphalt in there, you're just gonna have a swimming pool.
Yeah.
It wouldn't do us any good, so
Right.
you're absolutely correct when you say that. That grading would have to be done prior to that being paved or asphalted. And all that fall would go back to the French drain, and then at that time, if we had operating check valves, any water that from rainwater would go into the French drain, exit through our drainage system out the check valve, and then if the tides did get, those king tides come again, the check valve was off and operating correctly, even if they did fail, the water, if it did back up, it would back up to that area, but since the drainage was all graded correctly, it would just go right back to the French drain once the tide went down.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right, that needs to be taken care of prior to any paving.
Yes.
So thank you for explaining that. And I'm sure we're going to be hearing more about this plan as it
Yep.
evolves. One thing, though, that I'm concerned about is, per the JPA, the subsidence problem, which is causing, I mean, obviously that's not the full, that's not 100% of the reason that the asphalt's breaking down, but the subsidence problem and mitigating that problem, which it sounds like part of this project is supposed to mitigate that problem with some of the drainage issues. I'm just concerned because it sounds like we're getting into an area of paying for work that is needed because of the fact that the landfill is sinking. And I would want to be really careful about that because that, according to the JPA, at least what I've heard, is not our responsibility. And there could, you know, I don't know how costly it's going to be to fix the subsidence problem. I just think we need to be very careful about taking any responsibility for subsidence from a landfill that we had absolutely nothing to do with. So I'm a little cautious about where we're going with this because I appreciate that everybody wants to fix the problem, but it's not really our problem. We need to maintain the asphalt, but that's kind of the extent of it according to the JPA. And, you know, if we got into the fix the landfill subsidence problem, that, I don't know how much that would cost, you know what I mean?
That's not enough.
That's not enough. That's not enough. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner Brennan, though, it's, I mean, absolutely correct. There is an area of the parking lot there that is asphalt, and this is to the east of the new paving that was done as part of the ferry terminal project. We're going to be doing some grading and new base in that area as part of our trail maintenance project. And here's where we start looking and looking to the Commission for direction, because there are opportunities for ultimate efficiencies here. We're going to be basing and grading that area, but not paving it as part of the West Trail project. The Slurry Seal Trail project. Meanwhile, there is a potential project that would be enhanced if it's a new restroom building that South City's putting in with funding from Genentech, that would be enhanced if we were to pave in the parking lot the area immediately adjacent to that new restroom building. Then we could provide good ADA public access to that building. So then if we've got an eventual goal of paving that parking lot that is currently gravel with all of the caveats that Commissioner Brennan has brought up about ponding and grading and elevation and so forth, then there's a possibility of working these three things together into one. And I'd like to be looking at these two line items here a little more over the course of the next couple of months and possibly coming back to the Commission with a slightly different recommendation on how to move forward on that.
Oh, sounds like a logical thing to look at that, and I think having a gravel parking lot probably isn't optimal for anybody. And it's probably not even good for the landfill, because there isn't really proper capping or whatever. So it probably would be a good thing. But I'm wondering if, since this Genentech restroom facility or whatever is part of the need for this project, and I'm really glad there is going to be that restroom because I think that people need it. It's useful. It seems like this could be a cost-sharing type of project. Have we looked at doing that? Because we only have 10 years left of the APA, and you know, the facility and the use of this new parking area, or you know, paved parking area, will far hopefully exceed 10 years. So is there, at this time, it seems like there ought to be discussions about how to cost share on some of these projects that are going to outlive the JPA, and benefit the city.
Right. If we look at just that area of the restroom, I think if we would have paved that area such that there were a couple of paved striped parking stalls specifically for ADA, that we would be very much the junior partner of three partners of three entities that will be providing this service to the public. Genentech, which provided South City with the genesis of the idea and $250,000 to provide the building, and then South City itself, which is doing the engineering for the site work that will involve small retaining walls, some sidewalks, a foundation for this building. So I think South City is already fairly deeply involved in this, and we will be very much putting the icing on the cake for a comparatively small investment. So I think that small part of it is already a what was the phrase used? A cost share, if you will, if the commission goes there. So bigger project, we haven't discussed.
So what you're talking about is just paving a couple of ADA spots?
Talking about, so this is where it gets interesting in trying to strategize to make the most bang for the buck, because we're going to be looking at the whole gravel parking lot area and grading it and new base.
Right.
And so that's one project. Another project might be a small area of asphalt to do that. So what if, all right, I'm sort of getting down into the weeds here, but it might help. If we establish that the finished grade of the parking lot, whatever the surface, has to be here in order to tie in with all of the adjacent infrastructure. And part of our new project is to bring in base and compact that base. We've got to end up here. What we haven't looked at is, what if we only brought in the base to here, with our savings in base, and then we did the top 2 inches in asphalt? So it would be good to think of all 3 projects together, so that if we brought in base to this finished elevation, and 2 years from now, the commission or South City decided they wanted to work together on paving that parking lot, then we weren't coming in and actually removing 2 inches of base in order to replace it with 2 inches of asphalt to get our parking lot. You following me?
Yeah, I think, I'm sure that'll become more clear.
Sort of moving parts that I'd like to spend a little more time over the next month or 2 trying to fit together into a cohesive whole.
Well, just one last thing about this. I think the thing that's frustrating is when the ferry terminal was, the ferry terminal happened before I was elected, so I don't know the history there, but it's certainly a beautiful facility, and it's great to see the use picking up and everything. But it created a lot more wear and tear on the roads and the parking and the facilities, and there was clearly a need for a restroom near the ferry terminal, like immediately, but for some reason that didn't happen, and I never understood why there wasn't a restroom as part of the plan for the ferry terminal to begin with. So it seems like if this is finally the restroom that we've needed for all these years for the ferry terminal, it's really long overdue. And I also didn't understand that why adequate paving wasn't part of the project scope when the ferry terminal was put in. Like, why didn't that parking lot get paved when the ferry terminal was installed? And it seems to me that these are things that are outside of the little marina. And these are capital projects that should really be part of WEDA's plan and the city's plan, because you're getting into like areas that deal with public transportation and parking for public transit and restroom facilities for public transit. And we're not a public transit agency, we're just a harbor district. We're not doing public transit. So it seems to me that there should be clarity in who's responsible for what. And I think there are these gray areas at Oyster Point, and there have been for decades, a lot of gray areas about whose responsibility lies where. And it would really help, I think, if we could get more clarity on that and some logical definitions of why one entity might be responsible for certain things and another entity might be responsible for other things, because it's just a big mess right now as far as, it sort of all seems to fall on us, but maybe it's not, and I just don't even realize what these other agencies are doing, because there isn't a big cohesive plan or matrix that says, well, South City's doing these things, and WEDA's doing these things, and the Harbor District is doing these things. So we're just hearing about it sort of piecemeal, and it makes it confusing. And I would imagine if, other people on other agencies might have the same confusion, and the public certainly, so.
Well, I know that the gravel parking lot is largely used by our tenants, that the arrangements and agreements were put in place some years back that dealt with the wetter development of the ferry terminal. And so whatever that agreement was, that agreement exists, and presumably the development was done per that agreement. I'm just trying to look forward to better serve the public that's got a big dirt parking lot in an otherwise very nice facility. And that parking lot is used by our tenants, and it would be great to, like I said, come back with some sort of cohesive whole that would tie all these parts together into a project. But your point is well made, Commissioner, and certainly trying to get some clarity on some of these responsibilities and areas of responsibility. Good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next one up, again, just a placeholder, because this could probably get done just out of our operations and maintenance permit, but put $10,000 a year through the 5-year CIP, so that we've got clarity that we're going to be spending some money on. I think the big thing was tree replacement.
Yeah, the more pines that are on the facility, they've outlived their life. There's disease. Through attrition, we're starting to lose them. So we've done some research. There's a Catalina ironwood tree is what it's called. It comes right off of Catalina, or it came from Catalina. It's a very healthy tree that does very well in saltwater environments. That and the New Zealand Christmas trees. So there's a nursery right up on the hillside just above us there, Pacific Nurseries, that carries those trees in 5 and 20-gallon pots. So we'll just start taking trees out and replacing them as we go. So that's
And I know that I'd like, personally, I was in favor of buying the biggest tree that we can manage, so that we're getting some of that benefit in our lives.
I just want to make sure we're considering the root depth, because the landfill, the cap on the landfill only has a couple, how many feet of soil are over the cap?
It's different in all places, but yeah, we did take that into consideration, and they're a shallow, so they're more of they're a shallow root tree, and they're spread root. So they're not like a redwood tree or anything that go very deep. They're more of a spread root, and that's similar to the more pines that are on the facility now. And that's why there's already New Zealand Christmas trees. And I checked, Genentech has just put some of these trees in, and all their landscaping they did, and they did that for the same reason.
Thank you very much.
It would appear we've got a little settling in the maintenance building. It'd be great to do a survey of that building, figure out what's going on and why, and develop and then implement a solution. And yes, I understand all of the downstream effects and causation and issues that we've talked about a bit already this evening. But we'd like to get going at least on looking at that building right now. Again, just like in Oyster Point, we've got the oil spill trailer. I talked about that before. It's a grant-funded program through the Office of Spill Prevention and Response. And great, but yes, it does need a truck to pull it. And I would refer you back up to line 53, where we're getting a replacement truck. Culvert, catch basin, filtration, and separators. Jim, would you talk about that in a moment?
We have now, they're just filtration, but we have oil separators, so they're just, they're a two-part containment, so the water comes in, it feeds through, and all the oils and the contaminants float on top, and it's similar to a snuff, but it's not. So all that material stays in these catch basins, and then the city actually comes out, usually annually, and pumps those out, so they take any of the debris out. And any of the new grading that we do in some of these areas, we may have to put in some new filtration depending on what the codes are. Right now, would be just for replacing some of the grading or any of that kind of stuff that needs to be replaced.
So you can see then that if we were to do all of the projects listed in the 16-17 year, our very preliminary estimates at this point are at 643,000. The numbers jump in 17, 18, 18, 19 because of that dock replacement, dock 12 and 13, as you recall. So that's that. Administration, I think we spent too much time thinking about the two harbors. We didn't come up with much for administration. And as you can see, I've picked out the replacement financial system, the fund balance program. But there was talk about replacing the marina program. And I don't know, Glenn, if you've got information on that.
I think we're going to still be looking at that, but I think, so I think it being in 17, 18 is about right, even Arbor. But I think one thing I want to say about administration, of course, the real investment is in people, and I think you've done that, the reorg, finally some real progress in the IT that we're doing, most of which is not, I think almost none of it, if any, is going to result in being a capital expense. I mean, these are all appreciated, so I don't think administration feels left out because we're on the list.
Okay, good.
So the one thing that I didn't see on either list for Pillar Point or Oyster Point was finishing the Wi-Fi project. It would be great if we could complete something that we started, and so I just wanted to remind you about that.
Thank you, Commissioner. I did, per your suggestion, contact City of Monterey, Monterey Harbor about their system.
Great.
You said that fairly functional?
Yeah, ours is operational. There was some talk about putting maybe some more repeaters on every gatehouse, which would be a minimal cost. But I think like any Wi-Fi system, you have hotspots and you have, it just seems to be, in my house.
So overall, you think it's working pretty?
It's sufficient, is what I would call it. I wouldn't think it's the best Wi-Fi system in the world. I think we can improve on it.
I think if we looked at what they're doing at Monterey with the antennas they put in, they did it all themselves, and it was the Harbor Patrol or the Harbor Master's office who did it. That we might be able to get some tips from them on some low-cost ways to make the signal a little bit better. And they also have a good way to manage it with really awesome software too.
How is it built?
It's not very good.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what
It works right around our office, and that's it. The docks, doesn't work on the docks real well. ABC dock, it doesn't work at all. Yeah, I mean, for Pillar Point, it can use a major improvement.
I think we have to keep exploring. We did, I can't remember if Steve was there, we had a discussion with our IT consultant. That Pillar Point seems like it's an easier fix because of the position of our highest structure and how the docks are arrayed. For a number of reasons, at Oyster Point, at least this is the opinion of our IT consultant, is that it would neither be easy nor cheap. That doesn't mean we should give up, but I think we have a lot of research to do.
A lot of it's line of sight and ferry terminal isn't helping. Getting down to 12, 13,
Oh, I
14.
see. It's blocking.
Yeah.
And then about the admin, the two things, well, I appreciate that the marina software was mentioned, because I know that's been a concern. And then the other thing, just the meeting space. One of or part of our lease, which Commissioner Matoush and I helped negotiate on a ad hoc committee, and we worked really, really closely with past harbor master and interim GM Scott Grindy to get included in our lease a provision that the building owner will build out a partial kitchen and a wall so that we can create meeting space so that we don't have to have these roving meetings and we could get organized. And I know that that hasn't happened because we haven't managed to scan our large archive of old documents yet, but I understand that's underway, which is great. So I just wanted to remind management about that, and it would be great if we could use that space because we are paying substantial rent there.
We talked a little bit about Wi-Fi. I'd really like to see the heat turned up under the refi. And then we wouldn't have the problem with the Department of Boating and Waterways. So please let us know what you need from the commission to develop refi so that we can move ahead in that respect and not be tied down with this insanity with the Department of Boating and Waterways.
Do I get to show a movie trailer on coming attractions?
No, but that is coming up, that's coming up.
You should like the next meeting.
Yes.
And certainly, I mean, it does speak to a point though, that the next meeting we'll be looking at the budget itself. One of the things that's clearly absent from this is it's very nice to look at these totals. Where's this money coming from? And so we'll be looking at the DBW loan and potential refi. We'll be or otherwise get rid of that loan. We'll be looking at our reserves and reserve balances. We'll be looking at our budget and what it generates in the way of excess revenue over expenditures, so that we can come to you with a plan for funding these. And I think at this point, we're looking in, certainly for 16-17, in pretty good shape. If we could get all of it done, we have the financial resources to do it all. What we've tried to do as well, by the way, is spread some of these things out, because regardless of whether we had all the money in the world, there's an absolute limit and capacity to what staff can do, even if it's just managing the contracts of consultants who we hire to do this stuff. And then secondly, if we had all the money in the world, we wouldn't want to tear up all of the asphalt at Pillar Point Harbor all at one time. It would make the place rather unmanageable for a period of time. So we spread things out to try to manage workload and finances.
And we've got a lot of meat on the bones for being able to start laying percentages and dollar amounts on enterprise versus non-enterprise.
That's in the works, and you'll be seeing that.
I think that will appear, not in this first look at the budget, but will appear in later development. We are committed to getting that broken into your third quarter review for the current year.
Okay, great. I have a public comment from James Lee Hahn regarding this item 6.
Thanks. First of all, I just want to thank the commissioners who asked questions. It's going to make my comments a lot shorter. And I want to thank the general manager for addressing some concerns that I had. I am really excited that there's going to be some movement towards some sort of long-term / comprehensive plan to dredge. And I was just wondering if, I didn't hear his name brought up, but I was just wondering if Brad Dennis would be involved in that, since you're already working with him on the pilot project. One quick thing about the LEDs, I wasn't going to speak on this, but in Redwood City, on Jefferson Avenue, which is the main thoroughfare connecting the Farm Hill Boulevard exit on 280 to downtown, they put in LEDs last year. The first night they were on, they chose the white LEDs. I crossed residential and I crossed Jefferson to commute to see family and friends. So the first night I crossed it, I could see the lights from blocks away. And I had originally thought like there was maybe an accident or there was some nighttime construction going on or whatever. And it was LED lights. And since then they have turned it down, but because it is the white lights, it's pretty harsh, and I can see Jefferson from blocks away now at night. So I would recommend yellow if you are looking for a shade, because that's what we use for most of the older street lighting in Redwood City. Apparently there were some concerns with yellow, but I have very bad night vision, and it's more than sufficient for me. I also want to just mention, just real quickly, this is something I've kind of been bringing up since November, but and it might be something that's more for when we discuss planning on where to get funding and your long-term plan, but I would really like to see in this discussion some talk about climate change and how it affects your capital improvements. I'd like to see, like whenever the capital improvement comes up for approval, I'd like to see, some sort of staff analysis as to like how sustainable this is. Will this be able to handle scenarios? Is this a long-term versus short-term project? And I'd like to see all of that. And again, another thing I've been bringing up since November, if the Harbor Commission or staff would consider working with NOAA Fisheries on their regional action plans that they do every year for climate change. Again, it might be a long shot to get grant funding from that, but from what I've read, that's something that's a possibility. Even if you can't get funding, it would, better coordination with all these different agencies would be great. So please keep that in mind. Thank you.
And I believe that concludes item 6. So moving on to item 7, standing committee
We have to
policy.
direct staff.
Is there any,
I have a comment. First, I wanted to thank the staff for all the hard work that went into compiling this list. I know that it was a joint project with a lot of input from our Harbor Patrol and management. And I would imagine the tenants were involved because I know they talked to Harbor Patrol. I did want to say that there might be, it might be helpful for people who are looking at the district and wondering what it is that we're doing here to somehow over time, not immediately, because I know this is a working document that's going to evolve as the budget process goes on, but to try to tie this list of CIP projects, which is obviously spread out over the years, back to our goals and objectives, so that, maybe there's a new column where there's some indication about how these certain CIP projects fit in with our goals and objectives, like, for example, things like safety and all of that. So I don't want to create more work, but over time, maybe that's something we could do, and maybe there's a color coding system or a way to start to group things together. I think that would make it easier to show our progress, and I think that's something that the district hasn't done. We do good work, but we don't always show it to the world, so people don't really realize what we're doing here and how the facilities constantly need upkeep and maintenance and repairs. I mean, it's never ending because of the environment. And then, to the point of climate change and emergency planning, I know we've discussed some of that with the goals and objectives. But obviously, the district lacks a climate change plan. We don't have that. That's something we need down the road. We don't have a current emergency plan to address things like tsunami. And actually, we need to start to prioritize those things. But I really do appreciate that coming up with a plan for dealing with our immediate ADA situation is high on the list. So, thank you.
To the chair.
Commissioner Jen Crawley.
I wanted to thank staff too for putting this together. I think it's a very good roadmap to start with. And I am looking forward to seeing how this is going to be incorporated into the 16-17 proposed budget. And I hope vis-a-vis reserves too. Right. So I guess you probably need direction to move forward with incorporating this, right?
Not really.
Or is it happening?
Absent direction, when we
Right.
present a budget, we would include
All.
this left-hand column as the major maintenance capital improvement projects for the 2016-17 fiscal year.
Yeah.
Should the commission say, regardless of all else, this stays, or don't spend money on this, then that would obviously impact. But absent direction, this is what we're looking forward to. Where it is a living document. It will change not only through the course of the next couple of months as we either refine our estimates, have the slap on the forehead moment of something that we forgot, or recognize that something that was maybe planned for 17-18 needs to come into 16-17. All of these things make it fluid, and it'll keep rolling. So I don't want to feel that I don't want the commission to feel that you're locked in by recommending or recommending against something tonight, but you at least have a really clear understanding, I think, of what we have come up with, and we're absolutely open to additions or comments on any of these items as we go through the budget process.
Well, thank you for this.
And if I
It's a
may, I
great
understand, because I myself am working the budget out, that when you see first look even, and see how we would pay for these and what the other impacts are, really hurts the road and really help you decide if some of these are not as important as you thought they were. So.
Yeah, thank you, Glenn.
Could we take a break before the next item?
And I thank you, John. John is saying if any commissioner individually, or if the commission as a whole, in fact, wanted to walk the facility and put eyeballs on these projects, we could certainly arrange that. And Jim would be happy to do the same out of Oyster Point.
I thought we were going to have site visits soon.
Hadn't thought of it specifically in relation to the development of CIP, so it's a really good idea in relation to this. Good.
We should just.
Okay.
We're on the.
That's it? Yes?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, so moving on to item 7, Standing Committee Policy 3.0.
Could you take a bathroom break? Because I need to go to the bathroom.
All right, 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
What I'm saying.
So item 7 on our agenda is Standing Committee Policy 3.0. Review the noted changes and provide direction to staff. Can we have a staff report, please?
Certainly, thank you, President Mateo. This item was discussed at the last meeting, and the Commission recommended changes to the standing committee policy. Attached to your staff report are the policy as adopted on January the 6th, and then a strikeout and underlined version of the policy that incorporates the changes recommended. Most of the changes are fairly straightforward. The one that required just a tiny bit of research was the issue about how to measure whether committee members have received appropriate Brown Act training. And the California Special Business Association does have an on-demand webinar, which means that anybody can go online at any time and watch this webinar and receive some education about the Brown Act and then certification of attendance, webinars forthcoming, so that we can not only encourage that training, but then track that training has actually been done. And so I've included that language in the policy. And with that, we haven't answered any questions, any changes. If you so choose, you would policy 3.0 as revised.
All right, we do have a couple of public comments, I guess, before we take commission comment. So Bud Ratz on item 7.
First, I have 3 items. First of all, in terms of the context of the grand jury report and so on, how refreshing and how much progress has been made vis-a-vis example of Steve's report on the capital improvements project. It's tremendous, and you guys have made a lot of progress. Unfortunately, I was unable to attend the meeting where this policy first came up. And, but fortunately, I got to watch the tape of the discussion amongst the commissioners. And a very high priority of mine is respectful behavior. And a year ago in February and January, you hired a consultant and participated in a workshop where you established norms. All you commissioners other than Commissioner participated in that workshop. And one of the things that you agreed is that you would post those norms so they were visible during the meetings. And this has not happened. And I really would encourage all of the commissioners to go back and view the tape of the discussion of the policy and critically, evaluate yourselves. Moving on to the policy itself. I've been associated with a number of nonprofits. I've served on the staff, I've served on boards, and I've served as a volunteer. I've also served on the boards of profit-making companies. And I also, for a number of years, was on accrediting teams for the Western Association of Colleges and Universities. And all of the successful institutions that I've been associated with have encouraged volunteers and volunteer participation. Profit-making companies embrace their customers and interact with them and try to understand them. It's in my impression of the commission from watching that tape and that discussion is that you were like this to volunteer and public participation instead of being like this. Members on committees, when you're a member, you have a commitment. When you just stand here as a member of the public, you can walk away, and you don't have that feeling of obligation. And that's really important, because that's like, you guys are committed to the district, you sit up there, and so on. But
Mr. Ratz, thank you. We do have a time limit here for a reason. James Lee Hahn on item 7.
I know you've extended time for other folks in the past, and as Mr. Ratz sits on the Finance Committee, I think you could have afforded him another 30 seconds. I just want to piggyback on Mr. Ratz's statement because I totally agree with it. I appreciate staff's work in bringing this forward. I also look forward to staff working on a plan for getting folks, members of the public, onto these committees this year. This policy is going to be for next year going forward. What I want to say is that my issue with the draft policy that's before you tonight is item 4A, which you amended at last meeting, which I was not able to attend like Mr. Ratz. I agree with him. We sit in this room and in South City, meeting after meeting, we've heard Ms. Snap, we've heard other members of staff talk about how lacking in resources there are, manpower, womanpower, whoever, to get eyes on different products or whatever. It seems really counterintuitive to me that you would be looking to reduce the number of possible public members on committees. It just seems incredibly counterintuitive. For example, you just lost a commissioner in October who was a marine biologist. That's a big resource that, you know, I currently am taking a zoology class right now. I mentioned I was coming to this meeting. First question she asked me was, oh, they're a harbor district? Who's their science advisor? Who's their climate change advisor? You know, so when people are coming, and I gotta say the reason I missed the last meeting was because I'm doing it's a very basic project, but I'm doing a field study project with her. We're studying the effect of temperature fluctuations on habitat organisms. This is information you can use, and I'm not even whatever, a biology professor, biologist, whatever. So when you have these resources, and it's rare for people to come to public agencies and say, hey, we want to help you, we want to give our info, we want to work with you, it seems really counterintuitive that for 4A, you'd say, no, we want to limit the number of public members for each committee to 2 instead of 4. And what if one member of the board can't make that meeting, and, you know, there's always family issues. We have an emergency at Trailer Point apparently today. What if one member of the public can't make it? So you have 2 people at a committee meeting? And, you know, why not have more people there to give you input, give you feedback? So I appreciate that this has come forward, but I respectfully urge you to, before you approve this, to amend 4A back to what it was before. Thank you.
All right, commission comments. Do we have a motion to take care of this as the amended policy?
I would make a motion to approve this with a change at 4A to include, to keep the policy as it was, to allow for each commissioner serving on a committee to have the ability to select up to 2 public members to serve on the committee. I think by limiting it to 1, what we're doing is discouraging public participation, and there's been no reason to do that. Not one commissioner has brought forth any example of how this has become a problem for the district. It's not problematic. So I don't see why we would want to discourage public participation. So I move that we approve this with that change.
Is there a second? Lacking a second, is there a motion to approve this policy as it stands with the added section 4B4 and the correction to 4A, the underline and the strike through version?
I move that we approve this amended policy with the noted changes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
Mr. President, I have a question for clarification purposes. In the amended version, item 7G, the second sentence, which reads, recommendations sent to the commission will be approved by a vote of the committee. I'd like to have a clarification there. I don't know if this came up in our discussion at the last meeting. Was the committee for the voting members are the commission members of the committee? I was trying to track
Because
that.
I think I brought that up last time, but it wasn't captured in here. And even in the staff report. and I didn't, maybe there wasn't a decision, I don't know, to include this or not, but thanks for bringing that up. I didn't even.
I think the fundamental question is, are the public members voting members of the committee? And while I do recall that that was brought up at the last meeting when the policy was discussed, I have no notes on being directed to make any change to that.
Might I say what, to me, the silence on that means is that, because these are standing committees, the public is always welcome, correct? So what would membership mean if it didn't also mean you were voting?
There would be no point in being a member
Correct.
if you weren't a voting member.
But maybe you want to
Well,
clarify
actually,
that.
that's not necessarily true. As one of the members of the public said, it makes you more engaged.
No one is going to be a member of
So-
something that they can't vote
Well,
on.
that's not necessarily true either. So maybe for some people in here, but I would not say that's totally true for 100% of the members of the public.
You know, the policy is actually completely silent. It's not that.
It is, that's why when I read that, I was trying to backtrack to,
So it's,
Well,
I
that's,
think as
that,
Mr. Lazoff mentioned, I think the assumption is that the committee has members and the members are voting.
because it does not say in the language leading up to 7G that an appointed public member does vote.
It says neither the public member votes or that,
Right.
nor that the public member does not vote.
Right, so that's where I was asking for clarification in terms of how is this going to be interpreted without indicating
That would be no public.
either side of 7G. That's,
One thing I would like to say is that if we have so many policies where this kind of issue comes up, if it isn't clear to you, it would be great to suggest an amendment that makes whatever the outcome that you want to be clear, so that we're not arguing about what this means, you know, in the years and months and years to come.
It says here, committee discussion should always attempt to reach a consensus. Recommendations sent to the commission will be approved by a vote of the committee. The committee means the members, which means that all of the members vote. There is no lack of clarity there. It's crystal clear. So I don't see how that could get misinterpreted. I mean,
I didn't misinterpret it. I agree that that statement in and of itself says that public members can vote.
the members of the committee vote, whether they're public members or whether they're commissioners.
Right.
They vote.
That's
I agree
right.
with you.
That makes
That's
sense to me,
right.
and just members
That
of the
you
public
just-
visiting wouldn't have a vote.
Members that,
Of the committee, which includes
No,
only
members just
public and
visiting.
public.
only members of the committee
Right.
vote,
Yes.
not the
Exactly.
public that shows, like if I show up to the, you know, I don't know, the sand replenishment committee as a member of the public, I do not get to vote.
I understand that. It's members of the committee, which includes the commissioners and/or public members. I don't mean to say that members of the public who happen to be making public comment vote. That's very clear to me, but I'm not sure if it were clear to Pietro.
yeah, that's what I was getting at.
Can you think of a little,
I can clarify for you.
Please.
I think Peter has spoken on this. I agree as a matter not only of interpretation of the policy, but as a matter of the Brown Act. Members of the committee, of a standing committee, whether they be members of the public or members or commissioners, have the same rights, in particular when it comes to voting. So a member, if you designate a member of the public to be on the committee, they are a voting member of that committee.
Okay.
I don't see any
Okay.
confusion.
Well, thanks for that clarification. That's what I was looking for.
does that help?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Commissioner
I
Bernardo?
just want to thank staff for taking all of our comments and refining them and cleaning it up a little bit. But this pretty much reflects, at least I'm going to speak for myself, this pretty much reflects what I had envisioned for the revisions for this. So and for me, that 7G was very clear, so I didn't have any, my interpretation was the same as was already discussed, so I just want to say thank you.
Just to remind the commissioners, there is a motion and a second on the motion to approve the amended policy with the noted changes.
Right.
Any other discussion from the commission? Okay, can we have a roll call?
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner Brennan?
No.
Commissioner Crowley?
Yes.
Commissioner Carabana?
Yes.
President Mateo?
Yes. Item 8, General Manager Report, Mr. McGrath. Mr. McGraw. How did I do that?
I think the report says what I've done in the last couple of weeks. I do want to bring up a matter. It's sometimes difficult to do these activity reports because we're trying to capture a certain 2-week period that is sufficient to get in front of the board, to get written in front of the board in compliance with our practice and law. And when we are dealing with 2 meetings a month, what I would like to implement is that at the second meeting of the month, this commission receives activity reports for the previous calendar month. And certainly, that would never stop the commission from saying, well, okay, but what happened then? Or elaboration, and we can certainly do that. But getting these reports to once a month, and it can be a clear. I know that when I do this report, for example, I spend time, all right, well, the last one finished on February 8th, so when does this one finish? And if, for example, we're reading on March the 16th, and I can say, here's what went on February 1 to February 29. At this point, I think the staff are looking at every little bit that we can get out of efficiency and our time to have the board meeting. So I think we'd like to move towards that and to make sure that we are keeping the commission apprised of everything that we're doing and everything that's going on. I do want to start doing more general email blasts out to the commission and the general public on items of global interest. To implementing that soon. But this is a direction I'd like to go in. So, with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. And incidentally, with notable with Glenn, this is a conversation that he and I have had, and that's why his is not, he has one, he's working on one for the next meeting, but it's not in this staff, in this board package tonight. So, with that, like I said, if you have any questions.
I have a question, if I could go through the chair. I think that makes sense to minimize the number of activity reports. And I also think that the information that's shared in the activity reports, some of it should have a wider audience than what it currently has at these meetings. And I think some of it's information that should be shared through social media, which is a tool that the rest of the world uses, but the Harbor District hasn't found out about yet. And we should be communicating to the board and the public through social media so that we can all find out what's going on and forward it to our friends so they know. And I'm hoping that, you know, we can move forward with that soon, and the Harbor Patrol could play a role in keeping people updated through social media posts as well. Maybe one person could be designated to give updates related to the Harbor Patrol. It just seems like we're missing a huge opportunity here to provide information that's useful to our visitors and our tenants, and also get the good word out about all the hard work the district is doing, and the lives that are being saved by Harbor Patrol, and the great things at the restaurants and various commercial fishing businesses and recreation-based businesses, all of our businesses are doing. I mean, this is just such a missed opportunity. So I'd like to see more of that and less of it in these reports.
Any other comments regarding the general manager report? Okay, moving on to operations, Oyster Point Marina Park and Pillar Point Harbor. Do we have any comments from our harbor masters?
Well, I concur with Steve. The day I submitted this activity report, we responded to a heart attack victim on our facility, and that didn't get in this report. And if we did it monthly, we get a broader aspect of what happened for that period of time. And in 2 weeks' time, I mean, I think John had five incidents in the last 2 days, but he submitted the activity report on Thursday to get into the package. So I totally concur with Steve on that.
Any other comments regarding item 9 on the agenda? Right, the G, number 10, committee reports from the Board of Harbor Commissioners. I know I could start by saying the preliminary strategic plan agenda is out and being developed. The Oyster Point Liaison Committee is hoping to set a date soon. We have a Finance Committee meeting that took place not long ago. And we have a Beach Replenishment Committee meeting scheduled in the next couple days.
Next week.
March 9th at 11 a.m.
Okay, perfect. Any other comments on committee reports?
I have a question. The strategic plan committee, is that a standing committee or ad hoc? I can't remember.
I think it's an ad hoc right now.
And I don't remember getting the agenda for that. Did that go out to, it hasn't gone out yet?
No.
It hasn't been fully developed either.
Oh, okay. Okay. So can we talk about the dates of the meetings that we know are happening, just to remind everybody?
March 9th is the beach replenishment meeting at 11 a.m. at the El Granada office. There's people that are interested in dialing in and listening to the meeting, which we're also doing.
So people can phone in if they need to? Okay.
We'll be publishing a conference call-in number and an access code.
On the agenda.
Yes.
Okay, and is Brad going to be there, or is he going to be on the phone?
No, he's going to be
He's
there.
going to be there.
Okay.
And what was the time of that one again?
11 a.m.
Okay. And so, and then when is the next finance committee meeting? That's,
Finance
That's not
committee.
scheduled, but I think we're going to try to shoot for the usual day, which is the fourth Thursday of the month.
Yeah,
March 24th.
March
Thank
20th.
you. All those calendars.
What is that like, is that 10 o'clock or 10:30 usually?
10:30.
10, yeah, I thought so.
Not to be a pain, but when we publish the agenda for beach replenishment, and we have had interest from federal agencies and state agencies who want to call in, so we've established a conference line and a call-in number. For members of the commission or members of the public who are members of the committee, because this is a standing committee, it's a Brown Act committee.
Yes.
Therefore, if the two committee members, the two commissioners of the committee are present at the meeting, a third commissioner could call in, could not participate in the meeting, could call in, but would have to abide by all of the rules that go with teleconferencing into any regularly noticed public meeting, which means posting the agenda, making the space wherever you are accessible to the public. So, for example, it would not be legitimate to call into a meeting by a member of the legislative body while they're commuting.
Right.
Unless, I don't know how that could possibly work.
Well, you have to be at a place where the public can access it,
You have
yeah.
to post it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So.
And it has to be
make it
open.
simpler, of course, we're doing this so that the public can have better participation. Unless it's a very special case where you have lots of advance notice, commissioners would make it much easier on us, I believe, if they attended the actual meeting.
Well, just thought I should,
I'm just bringing, yeah, I just wanted to make the commission absolutely aware of that particular restriction when we've got a call-in number set up for a meeting.
Even as a member of the public, even if the commissioner is invited, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
because I can tell you that that's not what happened in
So,
Vegas.
so if the commissioner is a member of the public at the meeting, that person can't really participate at all.
Observe the meeting, they cannot
Right.
participate.
So, okay, I didn't know that for a teleconference for a commissioner as a member of the public. I know that you have to do all of that if I'm traveling and I want to call into a meeting
Yes.
and be counted as the quorum and on a vote, I know I would have to do that.
Yes.
But I didn't know that about a member of the public.
Are you
No, the
sure?
commissioner,
That's what I mean, as a commissioner who would be considered a member of the public dialing into a standing committee.
you cannot be a member of the public when you're on the commission.
You-
Fundamentally, that's what it boils down to.
Right.
If you're a commissioner for a
Okay,
Brown
I
Act
see what
committee,
you're saying, yeah,
It's a standing committee, and it's a Brown Act committee.
yes.
Commissioner Matoush can never sort of step back from his role as a member of the elected body and be a member of the public. He's always, first and foremost, a commissioner of the body.
Okay, but if
Is
he's
that-
there, if
But
he,
is that the case, Mr. Miller?
Well, it's an interesting question that I think I have to think about when you talk about teleconferencing.
right,
Ordinarily, if you have a committee of 2 commissioners and a 3rd commissioner attends that meeting, that would make a quorum of the entire commission and would be therefore an unnoticed meeting of the commission. There is a provision in the Brown Act that's a little tricky to enforce, but that would allow a 3rd member of the commission who is not a member of a committee from attending a committee meeting so long as that person sits in the back of the room with their duct tape across their eyes, nose, and mouth and doesn't participate, including not participate. And I don't recommend that that person be treated like any other member of the public with the rights to speak in public comment, because they are not any other member of the public, they are actually commissioners. So they can observe but not participate.
So Steve,
But the issue that I believe you're talking about now is a little bit different, which is you have a committee meeting where you are setting up a dial-in number, unusual, and my only recommendation would be that members of the committee not avail themselves of that dial-in option, but appear in person at the notice site for the meeting. And that's, I think, the simplest way to put it, is that the members of the committee should not participate by teleconference unless the teleconference rules of the Brown Act are followed.
and would the equivalent on phone of a commissioner having duct tape on their mouth, the equivalent would be to put the phone on mute if you're listening in? So you're not
my duct
participating.
tape comment, first of all.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure.
How does this fit in with the First Amendment? Because the commission still
So
debate.
let me explain. At an earlier meeting, there was a request to have a Brown Act training.
yes.
Or presentation for the commission on the Brown Act. I think that's a great idea. I'm happy to provide that. This agenda item was just a report on recent committee actions. I'm going to be a little reluctant to start
Yes, thank
discussing the First Amendment and its implications on the Brown Act.
Great.
Because this is actually way beyond anything I've ever heard described in any of the training that I've done. So that's why I'm having a hard time understanding this level of bureaucracy. Because this isn't how any other public agencies that I've watched does their work. So it's hard.
Maybe that you're not, that I'm not being clear, or that it's my, what
No,
I'm
you're
not
clear.
being understood. I think I'm going to stick to what I've said, but also offer or respond to the invitation to give a Brown Act presentation.
Could-
That would be next.
Could you use
Thank
the Brown Act presentation from CSDA, because that's the one that we're all trained on?
No.
I mean, that's the, you know,
Yeah, I
that's
think we're off.
where
We're off
grand
topic.
jury and all these other places look to
No, it's
for the
not.
standard. I mean, I think just because you said it, I'd like to know that it's substantiated by some other, there are a lot of interpretations on the Brown Act. I think you know that. I think we need to know for more than just you, Mr. Miller.
I'm going to jump in and say we are way off topic.
Off topic.
And I think I'll work with Steve and we'll schedule a Brown Act session with appropriate information.
Also, county council does a great Brown Act training.
I'd like to just say that regarding the call-in, I would request that you investigate a direct dial number. Now people have all these special cell phone plans and different things. If we use an 800 number, it's going to cost the district a lot more money. If people dial in directly off their own phone, it will reduce our cost to participate.
I just have one more committee comment, if we're still on that topic. What is the schedule for the water quality and public safety committee? Because at our last meeting, it was decided that we needed to have a committee meeting, and we talked about scheduling it then, and it wasn't scheduled, and then the staff was supposed to get back to us with the schedule.
Hasn't been scheduled yet. How many committees did you?
Well, that one,
I mean, we've got 2 meetings a month and a number of committee meetings coming up in the near future. And, no, we haven't scheduled a more quality public safety.
Well, could we
meeting.
schedule one now?
well, I guess my question is, do you even have the
I don't
information?
have the resources to think about an agenda.
Well, we told the president or the chair of the Mid-Coast Council that, and he said he was going to come, that we were going to have this. It was actually Commissioner Crawley's idea that we were going to have this committee meeting. So it would be great if we could schedule it and maybe just have it on that one topic that we said we were going to discuss at our meeting.
So
What I'd like
I
to
remember-
recommend is that an agenda be developed, and since Commissioners Brennan and Corrali, if you discuss that, developed a preliminary agenda. There was a standing date for water quality and public safety. I don't know if you choose to change that.
What was the
Well,
standing
hold on.
date?
So part of it was that staff needed to get information. So that was, the setting of the date was subject to your being able to get the information from the different
Could
stakeholders.
the commission refresh my memory as to the agenda topic?
It was the light at Capistrano.
The flashing
and
light. We were going to go to the site and visit. We were
Yeah,
just going to
we were
have a
supposed
site
to
visit.
My recollection of that conversation is that the conversation expanded out into a discussion of the route of the California Coastal Trail through the Pillow Point Harbor and other related trail and access issues. I put that on the goals and objectives project, and it didn't rank terribly high, so I haven't placed any more emphasis on that because I've been trying to focus on those items on goals and objectives that were ranked higher.
As we know, there was a recent newspaper article where this agency was taken to task for not addressing this simple solution of just putting in a push button for the flashing light. And it seems like if we could just have the committee meet at the flashing light, we could make some headway on looking at that and keep it as simple as that. So maybe what I can do is email with Commissioner Corrali about having a quick little site visit. That way it doesn't become a big ordeal and a big agenda. We can just have a quick meeting and try to follow up with Dave Olson and the
still a Brown
MCC
Act.
members.
It still has to comply
Mr.
with the
President,
Brown
I'd
Act.
like to call a
It's a
point of
state-
order in this
Thank you.
very extensive topic.
Well,
We just adopted a policy on standing committees, and item 7A says that each committee will decide its own meeting dates and times.
So why don't we just, I'm happy to set a time right now.
Well, don't take up the rest of the commission time to do this.
Let's do it offline, Sabrina, I think
Okay,
that's right.
that's fine.
So, And it is a Brown Act committee.
It's a Brown Act committee, so it would need to be noticed. So once the committee members have decided on that date and time, please notify Melanie so that she can make sure that the proper noticing gets out.
No, though I'm not
And
staff.
we will endeavor to
We need to
have
let
staff
staff know.
attend.
I'm not staff of the Water Quality Committee. I know that I would greatly appreciate it to have time to prepare
Yeah.
prior, or at least the understanding that, you know, many of those items will have no preparation before your meeting.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, I believe we're at the point where any harbor commissioner may make public statements limited to 5 minutes. Does anyone have a statement they wish to make? Commissioner Ferrari.
So I just wanted to, now that Jim and John are here, I wanted to reiterate my thanks and appreciation for having me tag along with you at Mavericks and being able to see what you do and experiencing it. And I have to tell you, I was so impressed with the work that y'all did, you know, with each other and with the other agencies and with the community. I mean, I could see very clearly that the community is, you know, has a lot of respect for you. Thank you for all you do.
I have a
Commissioner
quick
Brennan?
comment. I just discovered that the doors were locked to the building, and so the public was locked out of the meeting. So I think going forward, obviously, we don't want to lock the public out of our public meetings. That really doesn't work. So we need to do something about this situation with the building where these doors are being locked. So just wanted to call some attention to that.
Thank you for that notification, yes. Yeah.
If there are no other harbor commissioners making public statements, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.